Hey guys, if this is your first time to my channel, hello and welcome. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Emily and today we are going to be talking all about the Huda Beauty Coral Obsessions palette. If this looks familiar on my channel, chances are you probably watched my Shop My Stash video where I basically pick single eyeshadows out of my existing collection and basically try to color dupe this palette. So I do already have a video on that, but for today I am going to be going over this palette, testing it out on my eyes for the very first time, and showing some comparisons between all of my favorite coral eyeshadows and the coral eyeshadows in this Coral Obsession palette. That's a whole lot of coral, so let's go ahead and get right on into it. So the Huda Beauty Coral Obsessions palette retails for $27, and according to Huda's website, you get 67 grams of product, which sounds like a lot. I don't know, it's on her website, so if that's wrong, take it up with the boss lady. But she very recently released this palette about a week ago, I believe. If you have watched my channel, you know that I am all about this life. This is right up my alley, so I had to pick it up even though I have a million coral eyeshadows. And I wanted to show you guys some comparisons between some of the shades in here and basically all of my favorite coral eyeshadows that are my tried and true favorite. So since this is a first impression, I am just going to be showing you guys the colors, the application, and this eye look that I have done here. But as far as the actual review itself goes, at the end of the month, I am going to be doing a review roundup of all of the palettes that I have tried on my channel. I'm basically doing a first impressions and an eye look and some similar shades in my collection for every palette that I am going to be getting, because I want to show you guys right off the bat, these are the colors, this is how it looks on my eyes so far, and show you some color comparisons. But for an in-depth review on the formula and the wearability and whatnot, that is going to come at the end of the month, and I'm just going to be grouping together all the palettes in one video. But without further ado, if you are interested in seeing this eye look that I have done today, then go ahead and hang tight and keep on watching. Well, here I am, no eye makeup, but full face makeup. And yes, I know, it's a pretty strange sight, but we are going to be fixing that here in just a few moments. I'm going to be testing out the Huda Beauty Coral Obsessions palette. So let's hop right on in, shall we? This is what the palette looks like. Got lots of corally kind of berry tones in here. We have that nice pop of yellow, and then we have some shimmers. So I think I'm gonna do like a yellow berry eye, kind of like the eye that I did for the Maybelline Lemonade Craze video, but I want it to be a lot smokier. I want it to be pretty dramatic, and I don't know, I'm just feeling very extra today, so let's make this happen on the eyes. Let's make it represent how I'm feeling. So to start off today, I'm taking the Colourpop No Filter Concealer. This is in the shade Fair 00, and it's literally just a white concealer, and as I said earlier, I want this to be a pretty intense, dramatic look. So I'm going to use white concealer to make this look really pop, because I feel like a white base might really help with some of the berry shades and the yellow tone to really stick out, because I find that things can kind of muddy together, especially when I'm using this sort of color palette, if I don't really go in with a really strong, full coverage, lighter base. So I'm just going to pop a little bit on to the lids. Okay guys, that was it. We are done for today. I'm just kidding. Can you imagine? I look freaking insane right now with this white eyelid and the rest of my face makeup done. No, we are not done. So hopping right on into my transition shade, I'm going to go ahead and take the yellowy shade here. And this is a Makeupgeek Soft Dome brush. So let's go ahead and tap in. Not a whole lot of kick up so far. And I'm going to load the brush up. Okay, we're getting a little bit of kick up now, as you can see, but nothing we can't just blow away. And I'm just going to start running the yellow through the crease. And I want this look to be really, really smoky, really blown out. And so I'm going to really build up the pigment here. So here is what one application of the yellow shade looks like. It's not the most intense yellow that I've ever used. It's no sugar pill butter cupcake. But it's a nice yellow. It's a lot more muted and almost has a mustardy vibe to it. It almost reminds me of the Grey Poupon mustard. I know, I'm 12. I'm thinking Poupon sounds like poop. But anyway, it reminds me of that. It kind of has like a pale, almost gray toned yellow, if that makes sense. I don't really know how to explain it. It's very pale and it's not super vibrant. And it gives me mustard vibes, but it's not nearly as brown toned as a mustard is. It really just reminds me of the Grey Poupon mustard. And I have my Verimono color switch here that I'm just going to be cleaning my brushes off on in between colors. So next up for the eye look, I'm going to hop right into this more lighter coral, kind of peachy tone shade. And as you can see, we're getting a decent amount of kick up there, but it's not too bad. And now I'm just going to start packing this on the outer edge and kind of feathering it up into that yellow, but not bringing it all the way up because I don't want to cover up that yellow. And so far, there isn't a whole lot of fallout happening on my face, but that could change at any second because that's what I said last time when I was doing my melt stack review. And as soon as I got to that lower lash line, orange just right onto my cheek. But it was nothing I couldn't brush away, so I'm not super peeved by fallout, but I know some people are. But so far, I'm not getting any, at least with this upper lid area. So now I'm just going back in with that initial yellow Grey Poupon mustard shade, and I'm just kind of blending out the peachy coral shade. This is not by any means the most intense coral I've ever used. It's definitely a lot softer, a lot more muted, but this looked to be the more softer and more muted coral in the palette. But as far as the intensity of the coral shade goes, it's not anything even close to my most bright coral shade, which is my favorite one in my collection, which is the shade Flora from the Limecrime Venus XL palette. That one is very bright and pinky and neon and in your face, and I'm obsessed with it. This shade is a lot more muted and it actually gives me Sydney Grace Tart vibes. That shade is very similar to this in tone. It's kind of got that peachy coral undertone, but it's a lot more neutral and a lot more muted. And next up, I'm taking my Colourpop E9 brush, which is a lot smaller of a kind of tapered blending brush, really good for little detail areas and for precise blending. So I'm just dipping right into the berry shade in the palette. Little bit of kick up, not as bad as the coral shade. So far the coral shade has had the most kick up. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start patting this on the outer V. And let's check for fallout. Nope, no fallout yet. Kind of surprising, honestly. I always get fallout during this part of my makeup where I'm really packing that color on. So I'm impressed that there's so far no fallout. And once again, I have picked up some of the yellow shade on my Makeupgeek soft dome brush. And just gonna reintroduce that into that upper crease area. So this is what I have so far. I think it looks pretty good so far. They're not the most vibrant and intense shadows that I've ever used, but they blend like a dream. I really didn't have to spend very much time blending this. And I think that you can easily see the distinct color. I don't think these muddy together very much. So I appreciate that in an eyeshadow palette because I'm an over blender, okay? I will sit there and blend and literally blend so much that I blend the color away and up and into the other shades that I was already laying down. So I can appreciate a palette that is pigmented enough to really kind of shine through and show each individual color. So now I'm going to cut the crease. So I'm going to be using the Colourpop No Filter Concealer in Fair 00, the shade that I used for my primer. And it's literally a white concealer. So I'm going to start out with a small amount, and then if I want to dip in a little more, I will go ahead and do that. I don't want to get too carried away here, but I'm going to go ahead and tilt my head back and start to really carve the crease. And while that dries, I'm just going to keep looking down here because I don't want to have it transfer up into my crease. That wouldn't be too fun of a time. But I'm going to hop into, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the shimmery shade down at the bottom here, which seems to be the more rosy, golden, almost kind of brownish tone in this palette. And it is one of two shimmers in this palette. So I'm going to pick it up on this Makeupgeek foiled eyeshadow brush. Busting out all my Makeupgeek brushes for this Huda Beauty palette today for some reason. And I'm going to go ahead and take some setting spray here and just spritz the brush down. And I'm going to keep this on the kind of inner part of the lid. I'm not bringing it all the way in because I want to use the more orangey shade for the inner lid. And that is a pretty color. It's like a bronzy rose gold. It's got a hint of bronze to it, but it still has a little bit of pink, but it's more so on the bronze side. So it's definitely rose gold, but a lot more bronzy than a lot of the rose golds that I typically use. And that looks super, super metallic. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but it has a really strong kind of foiled sheen to it. And I am just cleaning everything off on my color switch here and going in with the same exact brush, but now it has no product on it. And that is the foiled shadow brush by Makeupgeek. And I'm hopping right on into the more pinky, corally rose shade. It's like a coral with a gold flip. I'm not sure if it's a duochrome yet because I haven't really swatched it out or tried it on the eyes. I'm just spraying this down with my setting spray. So now the moment of truth. When I first saw the promo photos for this palette, this shade really got me excited. So I'm really hoping that I enjoy it, and I'm hoping that it lives up to the wild expectations that I gave it before even looking at it. And that is what it looks like. To me, it definitely is different than the other shimmer. It's a lot more orangey and a lot more golden than the more bronzy, pinky gold shimmer. This is a lot more coral and golden, and also has a little bit of that pink undertone in it as well. I think it looks really beautiful with this eye look actually. Out of the two, I definitely prefer the more corally, orangey, golden shade. I think that is so beautiful. I feel like the more bronzy gold shade kind of gets lost because the orange one is just so out there and in your face, but I really, really like that. That is absolutely gorgeous. It's giving me like sunset on a beach, golden, warm, corally vibes, and I'm 130% here for that. Now I'm taking this Makeupgeek pencil brush, and no, this is not sponsored by Makeupgeek. I just felt like pulling out all my Makeupgeek brushes for this particular tutorial. But I'm dipping right into the berry shade, and I am basically just going to add a little bit more definition into the crease with the pencil brush, and I'm just basically going to line right above where I did the cut crease. I want it to stand out a little bit more. And I'm gonna hop back into that original lighter coral shade, and I'm just hopping back in with the smaller of the brushes that I was using, the Colourpop E9 brush. And very, very lightly, I'm gonna apply very minimum pressure and just really focus on blending out the upper edge of the line that I just made with the pencil brush. And one more time here with the yellow shade. I know I keep going right back into the gray Poupon shade. Now taking this Sonia Kashuk brush, this is one that I got in a breast cancer awareness set. It was on sale at my Target. If I can find the set, I will go ahead and link it, but it may be out of works now since Sonia Kashuk has been closing everything down. But if I can find it, I will link it. I'm hopping right into the yellow shade, and I'm gonna start running this under the lower lash line. Here is one application of the yellow mustardy shade, kind of smoked out under the lower lash line. And I just cleaned my brush off on my color switch, and now I'm gonna hop into the more vibrant of the coral shades. Why not go ahead and test it out? Nudging it a little bit closer to the lower lash line. And I'm trying not to get it into the yellow too much, but let's face it, I'm probably going to end up doing that. So that's why I always repeat my steps and kind of go back and forth and add more layers of product. So now I'm going to take the same brush and just kind of flip it on its side. This is like a kind of shader brush that's a lot more fluffy than a typical flat shader brush is. It's still got the kind of paddle shape to it, if you can see, but it's a lot more fluffy, and it's really good at kind of diffusing the lower lash line, and it also picks up a decent amount of product because of the shape of the brush. And now I'm going to get really smoky with the berry tone. Cleaning off my brush on my color switch, I am going to be hopping right back into the yellow and just reintroducing that to the lower lash line. So let's go ahead and talk color selection here. Now, the first thing that I noticed when I got this palette was that these two coral shades look almost identical to me, and it's really hard for me to kind of tell a difference. on the eyes, especially with these two shades. Now obviously this one in the upper left side here is a little bit deeper, maybe a little bit more pigmented looking, and the one on the lower row over here is a lot more peachy, a little bit more kind of light and more muted. But both of these to me are pretty muted, kind of warm orangey coral shades. They are by no means the most bright, impactful, in-your-face coral shades that I have in my collection. I do like them, and I do think that they are pretty, but the shade that came to mind that I already have in my collection that to me really kind of gave me similar vibes is this shade by Sydney Grace, and this is in the shade Tart. Visually comparing these, obviously this coral shade looks a little bit deeper, but if you really look at this bottom shade over here, they both have the same kind of peachy, muted coral vibes. And I think that this one is very similar, and it definitely has a little bit of coral to it, but it's a more so of a muted peach in my opinion. Then when we compare the shade that I think is the closest to Sydney Grace's Tart, which is this lower coral shade on the bottom here, you can see that they are almost exactly the same in color. Sydney Grace's Tart might be a little bit more muted, and the Huda shade might be a little bit more pinky, but to me these are very kind of muted, peachy pink with a hint of coral shades. They're not really coral to me, but you will see later when I show the rest of my coral eyeshadow collection that I am really into a very specific type of coral shade, and these kind of pinky muted corals are nice to have in the crease, and they're nice to kind of do some blending work with, but they're not really my favorite out of everything I have. I wanted to show you Sydney Grace's Tart first because I found that this is the closest dupe in my collection that I have to the coral shades in the Coral Obsessions palette. The other thing that I have noticed that I want to point out here is that the two shimmers in the palette to me are very similar. Now they are different, don't get me wrong, but when I actually put them on the eyes today, I can't really tell that much of a difference. I can see a little bit of a difference, but if you're gonna put two shimmers in an eyeshadow, I really feel like maybe they should be a little bit more different. And you know, maybe to some people these are a little bit more different, but once I actually put it onto the eyes, I am wearing this more bronzy pinky tone up here on the more outer V of my eye, and then I put the more kind of corally orangey golden shade on the inner third of my eye. And I don't know if you can see much of a difference. I can see a little bit, don't get me wrong. Not enough that I feel that these should have been the only two shades chosen for this palette. And as you can see, there they are swatched out. Here is the more bronzy pinky tone that is up on the corner here of the palette. And then we have the more kind of goldeny peachy shade, which is on the lower left side of the palette. So they are different, but I really would have liked her to put in two very kind of opposing shimmers, maybe a deep coral metallic and then this goldeny peach metallic, or maybe a deep berry metallic and then the corally kind of peachy light golden metallic. As far as the other shades go, one of the shades that really surprised me was this yellow tone here, and I am a really big fan of Sugarpill's Butter Cupcake, which is a very bright primary yellow. I also like some more pastel yellows, and I'm usually into brighter toned yellows. But this shade actually really surprised me. I didn't think that it was going to have a whole lot of pigmentation. I didn't think that it was really going to stand on its own and really show through the rest of the deeper shades that I put over it. But I really feel like you can see this yellow shade really well in my eye look. I feel like it stands out. I feel like it meshes well with the rest of the color scheme. And I was very surprised that I like it so much. I also do really enjoy this berry tone shade on the top row in the middle here. I am a huge lover of berry eyeshadows, and this one looks very, very similar to me to a lot of the berry tones that I have in my collection. But it was very pigmented amongst the first application. It was easy to blend. Now granted, I don't know the wear time or any of that stuff yet because I have not really tested this palette to its full potential, but I really like it off first impression. I think it's a well done berry shade. So after touching on all of those shades, we basically just have this middle row left that I haven't talked about yet. And I'm gonna be completely honest here, I probably won't really get much use out of that middle row. It's not really my thing. I might reach for it every so often, but they're just kind of warm neutral. We have a more reddish terracotta brown over here. We have kind of a muted orangey pink, but it's a little bit more cool tone to me. I don't really know how to describe that shade. It's kind of like a soft gray with a hint of pink, but it also looks a little orange. Am I crazy for thinking that? And then we have this more orangey, peachy tan shade. This isn't quite a peach to me. It's definitely a tan, but it has that hint of peachy orange. So this middle row I'm not really too crazy about, but I knew that going into it. I saw what the promo photos looked like, and I knew that this middle row probably wouldn't get too much love from me. I'm going to be hopping right on into some comparisons of my very favorite coral eyeshadows in my collection compared to these two from the Huda Beauty collection. So I'm just going to swatch these out. And on top here, we have the lighter of the coral shades. And on the bottom, we have the deeper of the coral shades. As you can see, they are very, very similar. Obviously, this one is darker though. So I'm starting this off with my very favorite coral shade in the world, and that is the Venus XL's Flora. This palette I've had for a couple months now. I bought it when it first launched, and I discovered how much I absolutely love this shade Flora. This shade is more vibrant, it's more neon, and it's a lot more pink than the shades from the Coral Obsessions palette. So here we have Limecrime's Flora swatched out. As you can see, it's so much more vibrant and pinky and punchy. It just reminds me of a nice cup of fruit punch. I have made a pretty big dent into this, and I have contacted Limecrime, and it probably annoyed them, asking them to come out with single shadows from this palette, specifically of Flora. And of course, I've gotten no response back, but a girl can dream, and I know that one day I'm gonna hit pan on this shade, and I am going to cry. I'm going to cry a lot because I'm obsessed with Flora. I am going to go as far to say that it is my favorite shade in my entire eyeshadow collection. And I know, that's a lot, but it really is. I absolutely adore it. I use it almost every single day, and I always get compliments when I wear it. And I really just want them to come out with singles of this shade, okay? I want to buy backups, I want a bunch of them, and I don't want to buy this whole stinking palette just to have this one shade. And I have been buying a bunch of coral eyeshadows and coral palettes and whatnot to try to find a dupe for this shade, and I have been unsuccessful. I found stuff that's close, but it's not as bright. I might look crazy because it might look exactly the same to everyone else, but to me, and for my personal preferences, I need Flora. Flora is the only one, and I love her. Speaking of Limecrime, this is the shade Rebirth from the original Venus palette. And it's a corally kind of pinky shade as well, and I just wanted to swatch it to compare. This way, if you have the Venus palette, because I know a lot of people do, you can see how this shade compares to the Huda Beauty shade. So the next shade that I'm going to be showing is Makeupgeek's Poppy. This is a shade that is very, very popular in her collection, and it was gone for a while, and I was upset, and a lot of people were upset, but she brought it back. And here it is swatched out at the bottom here, and to me, so far, this one seems to be the closest dupe to the two Huda shades up here. Poppy is a lot more orangey and a little bit more vibrant than the two Huda shades, but it is the most similar one to me out of everything we've swatched so far. So this is Colourpop's Slim Fit. This is a pressed pigment, so it's going to be a lot more pigmented than the Huda shadows. It is a coral that I have in my collection that I absolutely love, so I just want to show a comparison here. And as you can see, Slim Fit is very pigmented, it's very in your face, it's a lot deeper than the two from the Huda palette, and these are all just one swipe swatches. I am swatching them exactly the same, rubbing my finger in it 3 times, and then swatching it right onto my arm. And my arm is unprimed, by the way. I should have mentioned that earlier. Forgive me, I'm sorry. But this shade is, to me, the closest to Flora. This is the shade that I found that looks almost exactly like Flora, but Flora just has a hint more pink in it, okay? And I can see a difference. But as far as the two Huda shades go up here, Slim Fit is obviously a lot deeper and is not an exact color dupe, but it is in the same family, and if you've been wanting something a little bit brighter, this might be your guy. The next shade that I want to compare is Making Moves by Colourpop. And here we have it swatched out on the bottom. As you can see, this one is a lot deeper than the two Huda shades as well. To me, Making Moves by Colourpop right down here looks the closest to the deeper shade in the Coral Obsessions palette. Now, it's not an exact dupe because Making Moves seems to be a lot deeper and maybe a little bit more pinky. To me, they look the most similar. They seem to have the closest undertone. And as you can see, once Making Moves actually starts to sheer out and blend out a little bit, it does look pretty similar to the Huda shade up here. And the last shade that I am going to be comparing today is Sura by Devinah. And this is a shade that I've talked about a couple times on my channel. I love this shade. It's super beautiful, super pigmented. And as you can see, compared to the two Huda shades up at the top here, Sura by Devinah is a lot deeper, a lot more reddish orangey based, and a lot more pigmented right off the bat. And here we have all the comparisons just swatched out. Every time that I remove my swatches, I always remove a layer of my fake tan, and I'm going to end up with an arm that is way lighter than the rest of my body after this. Now that was a lot of information to take in at once, but like I said earlier, I did not show you guys the coral shades in my collection to basically tell you to go buy these or anything like that. I just showed you because I wanted to show a difference between these corals and some other corals that are out on the market. And if you were curious what the shades that I picked out for my Shop Your Stash palette that I made in a previous video for the Huda Beauty Coral Obsessions palette looks like compared to the real deal, I will go ahead and pop that right up here, and we can see how close I got when it came to just looking at pictures and just looking at swatches. Some of them were pretty close and some of them were kind of really far off. But that is going to be wrapping up today's video. Now, like I said, I will come back a little bit later on my channel and touch base with you guys and let you know how this formula worked out for me and the wear time and how these perform. But for right now, I wanted to just give you guys a little insight and a first look into what this palette is all about. I do hope that you consider subscribing. I have all sorts of makeup goodness happening here on this channel. And if you are interested in seeing how I feel about this palette after testing it out for a while, then stay tuned and go ahead and hit that subscribe button down below. I hope you are having an absolutely amazing day wherever you are, and thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time. Bye!